Trails of Cold Steel 4, The End of an Era, The End of Rean Swartz's Journey. Warning: this video contains massive spoilers for The Legend of Heroes, Trails of Cold Steel 4, the entire Cold Steel arc, and previous Trails games. After more than a decade of storytelling, countless characters, political conflicts, wars, sacrifices, and mysteries that connected an entire continent, The Legend of Heroes, Trails of Cold Steel 4 arrived as one of the most ambitious finales in JRPG history. This was not just the conclusion of a single game. This was not just the conclusion of Rean Swartz's story. This was a moment that felt like the end of an entire era of Trails. A journey that began with Trails in the sky, continued through Crossbell, and eventually led players into the heart of the Erebonian Empire. For many fans, Cold Steel 4 was the payoff for years of investment. It brought together heroes from different nations. It resolved conflicts that had been building since the beginning of the series. It gave closure to characters who had spent years fighting, suffering, and carrying impossible burdens. But at the same time, Cold Steel 4 is also one of the most debated entries in the franchise. Some fans consider it one of the greatest JRPG finales ever made. Others believe it struggles with pacing, length, and an ending that divides the fanbase. Some believe the true ending was the perfect conclusion for Rean. Others believe the normal ending was actually the stronger and more fitting conclusion. And some fans believe Cold Steel 4 should have been the final chapter of the entire Trails series because it truly felt like the end of a generation. Today, we are going to look at why Trails of Cold Steel 4 was such an important game, how it completed Rean Swartz's character arc, why the two endings created so much discussion, why the romance system remains controversial, why some fans think the Cold Steel cast should have been left alone after this game, and why this felt like the end of an era. The massive scale of Cold Steel 4. One of the first things anyone notices about Trails of Cold Steel 4 is its unbelievable scale. This is a game that was designed to feel like a finale. The entire purpose was to bring together everything Falcom had been building for years. Characters from Trails in the Sky return. Characters from the Crossbell arc return. Old Class 7 returns. New Class 7 returns. Former enemies become allies. Rival nations put aside their differences. The entire continent comes together because the threat is no longer just about Erebonia. It is about the future of the entire world. That ambition is one of the game's greatest strengths. But it is also one of its biggest weaknesses. Cold Steel 4 is a massive game. For many players, the length is overwhelming. The story can easily take over 100 hours, and players who want to experience every side quest, bonding event, NPC conversation, and optional scene can spend much longer. The game constantly reminds you that every character matters. Every town has people with their own problems. Every side character has something happening in their life. Every member of the cast has something to say after major events. For fans who love the Trails formula, this is incredible. It creates a world that feels alive. A world where characters don't simply disappear after their role in the story is finished. However, for other players, the amount of content becomes exhausting. The story often feels like it is preparing for the final battle, then stops to introduce more conversations, more character moments, and more side content. Some players feel the game could have been shorter and more focused. The pacing becomes a major criticism because the emotional highs are sometimes separated by long stretches of dialogue and preparation. Cold Steel 4 is a game that demands patience. It rewards players who have followed the entire journey. But for newcomers or players who prefer faster pacing, the enormous size can become a barrier. Rean Swartz, a hero who never believed he deserved happiness. The true heart of Cold Steel 4 is Rean Swartz. More than the battles. More than the politics. More than the mysteries. The Cold Steel arc is ultimately about one young man learning that his life has value. When Rean is introduced in Cold Steel I, he is already different from many RPG protagonists. He is talented. He is kind. He wants to help people. But underneath all of that is someone who doesn't truly understand his own worth. Rean is someone who constantly questions himself. He wonders why he was chosen. He wonders why he has the power he has. He wonders why people believe in him. And instead of accepting love and support from others, he believes the best way to repay them is through sacrifice. That becomes the central conflict of his entire character. Rean doesn't have a problem fighting enemies. He has a problem accepting himself. The burden of being the Ashen Chevalier. Throughout Cold Steel 2 and 3, Rean becomes a symbol. He becomes the Ashen Chevalier. He becomes a hero of Erebonia. He becomes someone people look toward during times of crisis. But becoming a hero only makes his personal struggles worse. Everyone sees Rean as someone powerful, someone dependable, someone who can always find a solution. But very few people see how much pressure he is carrying. He constantly puts himself in danger. He constantly accepts responsibility for things beyond his control. He believes that because he has power, he has an obligation to use it no matter the cost. By the end of Cold Steel 3, Rean is completely broken. Milliam's sacrifice destroys him emotionally. The beginning of the Great Twilight pushes him further into despair. He believes he failed everyone. He believes he allowed tragedy to happen. And when Cold Steel 4 begins, the strongest member of Class 7 is no longer standing. He is lost. The most important lesson: Rean does not have to fight alone. What makes Cold Steel 4 powerful is that Rean's greatest battle is not against Ishmelga. His greatest battle is against himself. For years, Rean believed being a hero meant carrying everything alone. Cold Steel 4 finally challenges that belief. This time, Rean is not the one saving everyone. His friends save him. Old Class 7 reminds him of the person he has always been. New Class 7 shows him that the next generation is ready to stand beside him. His allies across Zemuria show him that he doesn't have to sacrifice himself to prove his worth. The message is simple. A hero is not someone who dies for everyone else. A hero is someone who allows others to stand beside him. That is the conclusion of Rean's entire arc. His greatest achievement is not becoming stronger. It is finally accepting that he deserves happiness. Old Class 7 and New Class 7, the completion of their stories. One of Cold Steel 4's biggest successes is how it handles both generations of Class 7. Old Class 7 began as a group of students who were separated by social status and political differences. They represented a changing Erebonia. They were students who were forced into a world of war and conflict before they were ready. Over the course of the games, they became more than classmates. They became family. Each member had their own struggles, their own fears, their own personal journeys. Cold Steel 4 brings those journeys to their conclusion. New Class 7 also receives proper closure. When they were introduced, many fans wondered if they could live up to the original group. But by the end, they prove that they are not replacements. They are their own heroes. They inherit the responsibility of protecting the future. And they prove that the lessons of the previous generation were not wasted. By the end of Cold Steel 4, both groups have completed their arcs. They have fought their battles. They have overcome their challenges. They have earned their peace. And this is why some fans believe these characters should have been allowed to rest. The romance system and the missing canon answer. The romance system is one of the most unique and controversial parts of the Cold Steel games. Unlike many RPG protagonists, Rean's romantic future is determined by player choice. Players can choose different relationships through bonding events. Characters like Alisa, Laura, Emma, Phi, Toa, Sarah, and others can become important parts of Rean's personal story. For some players, this is a great feature. It allows everyone to create their own version of Rean's future. It makes the journey feel personal. However, it also creates a problem. Because there are multiple romance options, the series never officially confirms who Rean ends up with. Later games continue to avoid giving a definitive answer. And this has frustrated some fans. After spending 4 games watching Rean grow, build relationships, and finally overcome his emotional struggles, some players wanted to know who became his true partner. Instead, the series leaves the answer open. Some fans appreciate that choice. Others feel that after such a long story, Rean deserved a confirmed ending. The combat and Divine Knight battles. Cold Steel 4 continues the traditional Trails combat system that fans love. The turn-based battles remain tactical and strategic. Players have to manage positioning, abilities, quartz setups, crafts, and team combinations. The combat system is one of the strongest parts of the series because it rewards planning rather than simply attacking. But Cold Steel also introduced something completely different: the Divine Knights. The mech battles gave the series a larger scale. These fights represented legendary warriors clashing with machines that were connected to ancient history and the mysteries of Zemuria. They made major story moments feel truly epic. However, these battles are also controversial. Some players loved the spectacle. Others felt the mech fights were slower and less interesting than normal party combat. Regardless of opinion, the Divine Knights became an important symbol of the Cold Steel arc. They represented the ancient powers, conflicts, and responsibilities that Rean carried throughout his journey. The two endings. The ending of Cold Steel 4 is one of the most discussed topics among fans. The game offers two different conclusions. The normal ending, the tragedy that fits the story. The normal ending is devastating. Rean defeats Ishmelga, but the only way to end the curse is through sacrifice. Rean chooses to disappear with Valimar. Crow and Millium remain beside him. The world is saved. But Rean is gone. This ending is tragic, but many fans believe it fits the story better. For years, Rean had been moving toward this kind of conclusion. A hero who believed his purpose was to sacrifice himself. A person who couldn't imagine a future where he could simply live. The normal ending represents the final expression of that belief. It is painful, but it feels consistent. Some fans believe that because Cold Steel had spent so much time exploring sacrifice, loss, and responsibility, this ending carried more emotional weight. The true ending, hope or wish fulfillment. The true ending gives Rean another chance. Instead of sacrificing himself, he finds another way. His friends help him. The Divine Knights complete their purpose. Ishmelga is defeated. Rean survives. After everything he has suffered, he finally gets the future he always deserved. For many players, this is the perfect ending. The entire point of Rean's story was learning that he did not need to die to matter. The true ending proves that. However, some fans criticize this ending. They feel it becomes too much like wish fulfillment. The story removes some of the tragedy that had been building. Characters survive situations where many expected permanent consequences. The darker emotional direction of the previous games becomes much more hopeful. Because of this, some players actually prefer the normal ending. They believe the tragedy feels more meaningful. The normal ending is about sacrifice. The true ending is about choosing life. Both endings represent different interpretations of Rean Sforza. Why some fans believe Cold Steel 4 should have ended the series. Perhaps the biggest debate is whether Trails should have continued beyond Cold Steel 4. For many fans, this game felt like the perfect conclusion. It brought together every major storyline. It connected multiple arcs. It finished character journeys. It felt like the end of a massive chapter. Some fans believe the Cold Steel cast should not have returned as heavily in later games because their stories were already complete. Not because fans hated seeing them, but because they felt those characters earned their endings. Rean completed his journey. Class 7 completed their mission. The heroes saved the world. They deserved peace. Some fans believe bringing them back risks making their original conclusions feel less meaningful. The feeling is that Cold Steel 4 was the end of an era. A natural place where the story could have stopped. A place where players could look back at everything from Trails in the Sky to Cold Steel and say, this was the journey. Final thoughts. Trails of Cold Steel 4 is a game full of ambition. It is not perfect. It is extremely long. The pacing can be slow. The romance system leaves unanswered questions. The endings divide the fanbase. The mech battles are controversial. But despite all of that, very few games attempt what Cold Steel 4 accomplishes. It is a celebration of years of storytelling. It is a conclusion to Rean Sforza's emotional journey. It is the final chapter of Old Class 7 and New Class 7. And for many fans, it was the end of an era. Whether you believe the normal ending was the stronger conclusion because of its tragedy, or the true ending was the ending Rean deserved because he finally chose to live, there is no denying the impact of Trails of Cold Steel 4. It was not just the end of the Cold Steel arc. It was the end of a journey that had been building for years. A journey about war. A journey about friendship. A journey about carrying impossible burdens. And finally, a journey about learning that even heroes deserve a chance to rest.